Hello and welcome to Math Lessons with Linda. Today's topic is solving quadratic equations, and the method we are going to use is called completing the square. A little refresher: if you have a perfect square that is a quadratic, it's going to look something like this. A binomial such as x plus 5, in parentheses, that whole quantity squared. So if we have an equation and we're asked to complete the square, what we're going to do is make our equation look something similar to this. Here's our equation we're going to work with today. X squared minus 2x minus 48 equals 0. And you might say, well, we could factor that or we could graph that, and we sure could, but today we're going to use our completing the square method. First thing we're going to do is we are going to check to see if this number is a perfect square, the C value. If it is, it might already be the correct number that we need for completing the square. But 48 is not a perfect square. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to move the constant. So you may want to make a few notes as we go through. We're going to move this 48 over to the other side. We're going to do that just by adding a 48. So we have x squared minus 2x. I'm going to leave a blank space here. We'll use that in a minute. Over here, I now have a positive 48. I'm going to make another blank space over here. Okay, here are our steps. This is what we do to complete the square. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take half of my linear term. That's a fancy way of saying I'm going to take half of the coefficient of this x term. So I'm going to do 2. To take half of it, I divide it by 2. Don't worry about this negative sign. We'll take care of that in a moment. So I'm going to take half of my linear term, then I'm going to square it. So I've taken half, 2 divided by 2. Now I'm going to square that. It looks like I have a lot of 2's here. So 2 divided by 2 is 1. So I'm going to square the 1, and guess what? I get 1. This is my perfect square that I need, and I'm going to put plus 1. Now, how do I know this is plus 1? Well, anytime I'm squaring a number that's already in parentheses, it's going to be positive no matter what the sign was before. So this is always going to be a plus and then whatever your constant is. Now, remember from your first rules of equations, whatever you do on one side, you've got to do the same thing on the other side. So I need to add the 1 over here to keep my equation balanced. Okay, you have now done the hardest part, which is actually what we did to complete the square. So now I'm going to take my x squared minus 2x plus 1, and now that's equal to 49. And I'm like, oh, that looks fantastic. Now, remember that we were trying to make it look like a binomial squared? That is what I need to do. And I'm going to show you a really easy way to write a binomial squared. So we're going to turn this into a binomial squared. And this is how we do it. I'm going to take a factor from my x squared, which is just x. X times x is x squared. And I'm going to take the square root of my 1, also just 1. So that goes here. And whatever my original sign was for my middle term, that goes here. So to turn x squared minus 2x plus 1 into binomial squared, it looks like x minus 1 squared equals to 49. If you were asked to only complete the square, this is what you would do. We were asked to solve our quadratic equation by completing the square. So I'm going to move up here where I have a little more space, and I'm going to finish this problem. Now, the good news is this is now a perfect square, and 49 is also a perfect square. So to solve, I'm going to take the square root of each side. So this becomes just x minus 1. When I have something squared, but it's also under a square root, those cancel each other out. I've just got x minus 1. Now, over here, this is a little tricky, especially if you have not already done the quadratic formula in your math class. But for now, take it on faith that we need to do a positive and a negative value for whatever we're taking the square root of here. So I have a plus 7, or it could be a negative 7. Now, to solve this, I need to add 1 to both sides, but be careful, because what I'm going to have is two different things. I'm going to have a positive 7 plus 1. That's my plus 7 right here. But I'm also going to have a negative 7 plus 1. That's how I get my two different answers for this quadratic. So I have 7 plus 1. So one of my answers is x equals to 8. Negative 7 plus 1 is negative 6. That's my other solution. So I do get two answers. These turn out to be very nice integer values. And that is how I have solved my quadratic by using completing the square.